Welcome back. You're watching the Front Row with me, Abi Agina. Today on the program, we are discussing the cross-border peace efforts, and we are taking stock of it is 1 year since the signing of the Moroto Peace Accord between Kenya and Uganda. And my panelists are trying to take us and understand why all this is important. Welcome back to the show. Well, we continue to receive your questions, your feedback on our social media platforms. Remember, you can tag us along, tag at SeedChat1, at Eugene L. Wamalwa. You can also tag me at Agina Abi, and we'll be able to sample your questions, your views on this very hot topic as we look to get solutions around cross-border security in the region. Well, at this juncture, I'd like us to go back and get some more questions to our panelists. And at this point, I'd like to bring in Mr. Chatterjee to just also give us his take really on when we look at this peace program. We've, of course, did make serious comments around it is a program that has borne fruit. We've seen changes in the various communities that were warring in the past. And would you say this is a program that needs to be emulated, Mr. Chatterjee?
This program must be emulated, and that is why the success of this program. I'm not saying that we are successful. We are successful once the people of those regions say, yes, our lives have changed. Yes, our conflicts have ended. Yes, our children are able to go to school. Yes, we have universal health coverage. Yes, we have an affordable house. All these things. So that would be the acid test. What we are trying as the UN family in Kenya, with the government of Kenya, is to achieve that particular objective. Because unless and until we get the issue of the centrality of human dignity in the equation, we will not be able to achieve precisely that kind of peace dividend and the stability that we aim for. What C.S. Vamalwa talked about in terms of the prevention of violent extremism is very real. It is very real. It is when a study was undertaken by the UN to look at some of the causes of violent extremism in Africa, and some of the prime movers of that is related to hunger, of poverty, of deprivation, of marginalization, of exclusion, and perhaps then comes sometimes the heavy-handedness of the state. This is an opportunity for us to rewire that narrative, because what we have seen is years and years of hard power, kinetic energy, war fighting, getting the soldiers there has not yielded results. What will yield results is when the communities take responsibility for it. What we are seeing there are now communities taking responsibility for it. That is what will change the equation. Don't forget, not just too long ago, all of Europe was at war within each other. That's what we saw from the First and Second World War. Important lessons to draw from. This is not interstate. It is the internecine nature of this. And therefore, you need mature leadership, which is what Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia are demonstrating, that look, our people are the same. We need to find a way of bringing them into mutually reinforcing prosperity and collaboration. This is what it is doing. And therefore, it is very important for us to keep an eye on the ball and not allow it to go down. You know, we are in this decade of action. By 2030, Kenya, like many other governments in Africa, has signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals. We have a Vision 2030 for this country. It is these sorts of programs that remove instability, bring peace, bring prosperity, bring people who are on the periphery of our consciousness into the center. We will see strong, progressive economic growth. Over to you.
All right. And Mr. Chatterjee, well, it is one thing for the locals to see water is within their jurisdiction. It is another thing for them to also see that there is some development when you look at the roads coming in. And from where you sit, how do we drive towards meaningful investments for the local people?
Right. Very important question. And here is where I put the question back to the government of Kenya. And it is very important to address it. Kenya has done well. It rose from about 135 in the ease of doing business to, I think it's right now in the late 50s, about 58, 59. I think Kenya's public policy needs to change and come in the top 20. The ease of doing business. It must be able to attract the private sector, both local and global, to come into these spaces. We've done it in this very country. In Mandera, Wajir, Marsabit, Lamu, Isiolo, Migori, we actually worked, the UN family worked with the government, and 6 private sector companies joined us in reducing maternal mortality ratios, and these 6 counties contributed to 50% of the deaths. We had Philips, GlaxoSmithKline, Safaricom, Huawei, Kenya Healthcare Federation, and the US pharmaceutical company Merck. Nobody thought this was ever possible, but what started in 2015 achieved results. As a result, Kenya was invited to the World Economic Forum in Davos for real results of the government, the UN, public-private partnership results. To me, this is precisely what we need in these areas. Bringing in the real technological advantage, the real innovations of the private sector, the government providing precisely what the CS referred to, the stable, peaceful, secure areas for these companies to come and thrive. What the UN will do is provide the best human capital to work with the counties, to work with the locals, to make sure that they are able to articulate that peace dividend into a real development dividend. And this is where that real collaboration will take place. In fact, this is where we are going to see the resurrection of a new model of multilateralism, which Kenya, on many ways, is actually leading. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Chatterjee. And I'd like to pose the same question to CS Eugene. Well, at the end of the day, majority of the locals, the biggest hurdle is how can they eke out a meaningful living, even as we see this peace program bearing fruit. Talk to us about the meaningful investments over and above what the government is already doing around putting up the dams, building the roads, and building the schools.
Host for people, and once a conducive environment is availed, they can be able to be very, very productive. I do know that one thing that has touched every corner of Kenya, as I said, is devolution. With the resources coming down to the counties are actually turning into engines of socioeconomic transformation of our country. They are the ones actually driving the economy of this country. So would like to see more of this happening. And what we've been urging is just prudent use of these resources. And also, when you look at the majority of the population, being young people and women, we have very clear policies that His Excellency the President has been on the forefront in ensuring that the fruits trickle down to the young people, particularly the access to government procurement opportunities, AGPO, for our young people, for our women. If we are able to implement this, both at the national level and at the county level, you are talking over 200 billion worth of business. We can actually empower our young people. So already with the connectivity being improved, with the extension of the fiber optic, and also solar power in northern Kenya, where there are many parts that were off the grid. But we have the largest solar power in Garissa. We have the wind power in Loyangalani. So with all these things coming into place, the roads being tarmacked, and the time between Nairobi and these corners of the country that had been left behind being interconnected, we'll find more development coming at a more accelerated rate. But more so, as I have said, we have many programs under the NADI, under the Horn of Africa that I have said, and other programs that are coming down to these regions. So I believe we're making good progress, and we want to see the youth and women of this country put at the center of all this. And at the center of devolution, that is where we want them to be. Thank you.
All right, CS. We are just about to come to the tail end of our forum. And let me take it back to Mr. Chatterjee. And what is the importance of having peace around international borders?
Well, I would say I would begin with the issue of the whole Africa Free Trade Area, and therefore you need peace in these bordering areas if you want to see the real movement of goods, services and people. If the borders are fragile, if there is conflict, you will not see transportation happening. I mean, if you go to Moyale, it's quite remarkable to see this road that comes all the way from Lamu and connects to Addis. It's changed their lives. I mean, it is dramatic. It's like, you know, to see this beautiful road constructed by a Chinese company, supported by the European Union and the Africa Development Bank and the government of Kenya is remarkable. You know, these peace at the borders needs a real partnership, not just between the countries who share the border, but between the people, the communities, the civil society organization, and the UN, the private sector, etc. Because this is where also you are going to see a large, the real trading will happen at these places. So you don't want borders to become so fragile and insecure that people don't go there. So this will open up enormous opportunities. Just as you see, we can already see a global best practice in the establishment of the European Union and what that did in bringing mutual prosperity between all the member states of the European Union. And I think this is the kind of development we want to see at the borders. But the CS said something very, very important. He talked about youth and women. And that is a particular reason. Also, if you look at these bordering areas, these are places which have very, very high total fertility rates. On an average, when I say total fertility rates, is between 6 to 8, which means in an average lifetime, a woman would produce about 8 children. A lot of these are young people who are despondent, hopeless, and lack opportunities. The focus on youth, the focus on bringing gender into the equality perspective, real opportunities for women, will change the situation at the household level. Now, when you have a man and woman who are working and earning an income, what happens is there's disposable income. Disposable income means the woman can plan her family, as a result of which they are able to better invest in the health, education, well-being of their children, and therefore you see a human capital that emerges. This is why we need to quickly move to the periphery and make sure that those basic elements of universal health, access to food, once you start to take care of that, the other important inputs align and come into this. So it is extremely important to keep these two target groups, because over 70% of Kenya's population is less than 30. This is a huge opportunity of reaping a demographic dividend. If we don't make that investment in young people, in gender equality, in the next 10 to 15 years, we may lose the demographic dividend. And therefore it is even more crucial. While we are doing everything we do in collaboration with the government, we must keep youth and gender at the center of this. And I'm pleased to say that President Kenyatta, as a global leader on Generation Unlimited and as a global champion on young people, has really pushed this agenda on youth. And you probably would have seen on the 5th of August, co-led by CS Macheru and Ms. Ruth Kagia, we saw the launch of the Kenya Generation Unlimited initiative, which is really tapping into the real potential of young people in this country. So again, I would just reinforce the point. Therefore, the stability and peacefulness of the borders are crucial if you want to see overall GDP growth and global and velocity in economic growth. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chatterjee. Very salient points you've raised there. And we have some questions now on our Twitter handles, and I'd like us to just revisit some of these questions. There's a question here from Sam Kimeli. Sam, thank you for your question. He's asking, how are the two governments involving communities and other stakeholders to ensure sustainable peace along the Karamoja corridor? The other question is, apart from having each side to be independent, I think the two countries should have programs that bring citizens of the two countries, like annual culture show, to cement the friendship. I'd like to just get some quick reactions from CS Eugene, and of course, you can also weigh in on this, Mr. Chatterjee.
Thank you, Abi, and as I had already indicated, we want to thank our governors who have played a major role in ensuring that we have peace between the communities. And I can say that, in fact, they were ahead of us as a national government, because at the local level, they had already started integrating. And this by itself has promoted peace and integration between the communities in terms of annual cultural festivals. I've been to the one in Turkana, Tobongulare, and it's an amazing magnet that brings together communities across the borders. And I thank Governor Nanok. I think it's only this year because of COVID-19 we are not able to have it. He has assured me that next year we'll be able to have it. And also, when you come to Marsabit County, we've always been having the Loyangalani festivals, as well as the Camel Derby in Maralal. And we must thank our governors and encourage that we continue using culture as a tool of integration to bring the communities together. We cannot succeed, even as national governments with our international partners, without the input of the local communities. And this is why the county governments are very, very important. Those of you who witnessed the Moroto Accord, when we went to sign the MOU, His Excellency the President stood with the two governors, Governor Lonyangapo, West Pokot, and Governor Nanok. And they were on the forefront, they were involved every step of the way, because they are going to be the implementers on the ground. And we have been very happy to see them start local programs, such as vaccination of cattle across the borders. And once I saw Governor Lonyangapo donating some bulls to the communities across in Uganda. This by itself creates that conducive environment. Instead of people engaging in cattle rustling, they will now engage in cattle trade, so that they trade their animals. They also improve on the quality of the animals, so that they improve their livelihoods in terms of their income. So we cannot succeed without involvement of the local communities. And in our structures, as we have said, we have had meetings in Turkana, we have had meetings in Moroto, and I do recall one organized by IGAD before we went to Moroto for the signing, when we established the DFU, and that is the Development Facilitation Unit. It's an office in Moroto that brings together the local leadership to interact, to plan together with their national governments, with the support of our international partners. So I want to assure you that that is something that we'll keep doing so that we integrate. Thank you.
All right, CS, and we are totally out of time, gentlemen, and we need to bring this conversation to a close. I'd like to get your closing remarks, Mr. Chatterjee, and what do you see in the horizon when it comes to peace and stability?
To me, the horizon represents hope, and that is why the criticality of us keeping the eye on the ball and making sure that as we advance on these cross-border programs, we see quick development, not slowed down development. This is why the Deputy Secretary General insists that, this is a decade of action. She expects her UN resident coordinators and country teams coming together, supporting the government and achieving the development objectives. And the second most crucial thing in this whole narrative is going to be, how do we make sure that this program gets the traction, visibility, and support? That will happen when we make the ease of doing business. I would just finish with one very important point. In the next 10 years, this is a prediction made by the Africa Development Bank and the World Bank, agro-business in Africa is going to be $1 trillion worth. $1 trillion, not shillings. Now, in order to reap that, I think Kenya can get ahead of the curve with what we can actually do in these bordering areas, because this will be the biggest magnet for job creation, the entire value chain that will come into effect over there, which means we have to look at it from a multi-sectoral point of view. The education, the health, access to clean water, giving them the new tools, technology in order to leapfrog the agriculture and the green revolution. If we can get that focus right, this will be the transformative effect that we will see. It will not take 10 years for us to do that. It will actually take a much shorter timeline, because we've got the technology and the innovation and the political will to accompany it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. C. Chatterjee. And finally, CS Wamalwa, in under a minute, your closing thoughts, and of course, talk to us about what the role of the building bridges plays in all this in less than a minute, sir.
Thank you, Abi. What do I see on the horizon? I see the borderlands moving from the borderlines of our national planning and development to the center. And I do take great pride in serving under the leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta, whose administration has seen the borderlands move from the borderlines of our planning. And this I see in another 10 years with this plans we have put in place in cross-border programs, in the NADI initiative, the Horn of Africa initiative, and all other initiatives, particularly devolution. I see the fortunes changing. And this is one area that even as we engage in the BBI, we see a bright future. If we can make devolution the centerpiece of the Building Bridges initiative, we will be able to see more resources going to far-flung corners of our country that hitherto had been forgotten. So we'd like to see the BBI succeed in bringing more resources to these corners so that we can bring more development that has been lacking. And with development, we will have peace. But also without peace, we cannot have development. So we'd like to see how we can work together with our neighboring countries, our neighboring communities, with our counties, and our partners to ensure that they succeed. So I'm very grateful, Abi. You've given us the opportunity to celebrate and mark a great milestone in terms of cross-border peace and sustainable development programs that we are developing. Asante sana.
All right. Thank you so much, CS Eugene Wamalwa, Mr. Sid Chatterjee, UN Resident Coordinator. It's been a pleasure having you on the front row, and we do hope out of these conversations, this will be opening up more discussion, more narratives that will be driving towards peace. Thank you so much for your valued company. See you next time. Take care and keep safe.
This is KTN News.